Welcome to Protect, Suicide Prevention Training Podcast for Healthcare Professionals. I'm Manan, Consultant Psychiatrist, Founder, and Head of Faculty at Progress Guide. Good day. We're going to pick up the conversation with Tracey Chitty where we left off in the previous episode. In this episode, we will go through the key messages from the core module, the Care Compass, Optimise Pain Relief, the Risk Rethink, and Empathy in Action. So let's dive in to where we were at the end of the previous episode. So we started with the Care Compass, and for our listeners, those of you who don't know what the Care Compass is, it's two axes. There's an x-axis and there's a y-axis. On the x-axis, we look at fragility and resilience, and on the y-axis, we look at the professional's focus. Is the professional primarily focused on safety, or are they focused on self-reliance, which are the two ends of it? It's not right or wrong. It's just where the person is. And we talked about the four quadrants in there in terms of prudent care, where we are very cautious, where the person's quite fragile, and our focus is on safety. We talked about the diametrically opposite end, which is permissive care, where we are stepping back. The person's feeling quite resilient, and our focus is on self-reliance. So that's the axis we want to go from. We want to go from prudent care initially, where we are very focused on safety, making sure things are safe. And then we move towards permissive care, gradually giving the responsibility more and more back to the person. Sometimes, though, care could become incredibly prescriptive, where the persons become resilient, but we are really over-involved in their life. So we kind of go from prudent into prescriptive care rather than going into permissive care. And sometimes, care could get very rushed and could get dangerous and precarious, where we have moved too quickly towards self-reliance, but the person isn't ready. The person's still quite fragile. And we have moved from prudent care into precarious care, so going into self-reliance. So those were the four quadrants. And as we were talking about it, as we were discussing it, I could almost see light bulb moments happening for staff in the room, kind of thinking, and that came through in the learnings as well at the end of the day about how they may be able to just draw the four quadrants, and X and Y axis, and be able to use that in conversation with the student, with staff, with fellow colleagues when they're talking to perhaps their principal. This is where they started. This is where they ended up, or with family as well. They could be explaining where they believe the student is, where are they going there, how will we get there? Explain the whole journey. Any thoughts on that, Tracey?
Really, for me, it's such a fabulous way of making these conversations transparent with everyone who's involved. And the phrase that you are using, there is no recovery without risk.
Yeah, without risk, there is no recovery.
Other way around. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so it's like the same thing. Yeah,
same
something went through. Yay!
But how important that is. But it also enables the adults, it requires the adults to hold on to their fear around what if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
But by having the care compass, that we can actually navigate that bit by bit in collaboration, in relationship, and talk through those concerns, so that with the student as well. Absolutely, with the student. I think sometimes with our students, because we care so much, and because of that, we can take away any kind of voice or choice that they have if they present as being suicidal.
Yeah. Without risk, there is no recovery. With the right care, the person has more control, right? So, and it's just a tool, but you can use it to explain to the person, hey, this is where you are. And you would find me that I'm asking a lot of questions about safety at this point in time because I'm genuinely concerned about you. But this is where we are, right at the bottom of the prudent care quadrant. But I want to get here. And the only way I can get to that permissive care bit is by working together, is by creating that partnership. And I think fundamentally understanding that even if I'm seeing you weekly or twice weekly, that's 1 hour or 2 hours. The remaining 166 of the 168 hours the student is on their own. They have to manage their safety. And it's that whole idea about getting people on board. And I kind of felt that you had a little agenda there around getting everyone to take responsibility. I think in the conversation, particularly with the teachers, and I can see as a safeguarding and well-being advisor why we would have that agenda as a shared responsibility, more eyes, on the person. And often the problem is when everyone is responsible, you could get into a situation where no one is responsible. But what a lot of the conceptual models do within Protect is move from who is responsible to who is responsible for what, right? That's a fundamental shift, and building clarity in that, as the student, I am expecting you to be able to do A, B, and C. As parents, I'm expecting you to be able to do A, B, and C. As the school counselor, I will do A, B, and C. The form teacher will do A, B, and C. And creating that clarity of thinking is so containing for all that anxiety that people are experiencing.
I think it's role clarity as well, role boundaries, role clarity, recognizing and valuing what the different people in the student's life actually brings to this picture.
Yeah. Because that question came up, isn't it, around roles? Because when we were doing the Circle of Trust exercise, I think it was from Reshmi actually. So she was asking, if because friends are such a large part of a teenager's life, if they are sharing all this distress with another student, how does this other student contain that? And, you can again use the care compass to have those conversations, who do you share with, what do you share with whom, and what can they do with it? And in the Pearls program, which is specifically for students, the R in Pearls is about role clarity and your role as a friend. You're not a therapist, you're not a doctor, you're not a counselor, you're not a nurse, you are a friend. And how do you continue to be a friend and still be supportive of that person? So, I thought I could just see, and particularly in some of the comments that were coming through, I think one of them was from Joe about how he could take it into his clinical practice, like how he can have conversations using the care compass.
Oh, completely. And I think it would enable people to have really deep, meaningful, safe conversations. I do think when you've got a third point of reference, that it's not just between, you've got something visual, you've got some understanding around this visual that we can actually talk about and ask questions about. That's where we also gain partnership.
Yeah, and it's and it's important for people. You mentioned hope before, for the student to see, okay, I'm here, but I'm journeying towards there. So being able to visualize that this is my journey, because when control gets taken away, it can, one of the key things about suicidal distress is that feeling of helplessness. People feel that the locus of control is outside and they can't do much about it. You are you're empowering the person and helping them see, hey, we are on this journey. Yes, we might have taken a lot of control and we're watching you and this and that, but it's because, we care about you. And my goal is to make my space in your life I don't want to exist in your life, right? That's my goal.
Yes.
So
we want to do ourselves out of a job, basically.
Exactly. If we have done ourselves out of a job, then we have been successful. And that's what anyone working in mental health, whether that be in schools and universities, or whether that be in the public sector or private sector, in healthcare or social care, that's the goal, that I should not have a place in your life, because you should be able to connect with your friends, your natural circle of support, rather than as a professional. So that was the first chapter, Care Compass. And then we went into Optimise Pain Relief, where we talked about getting below the position into interests and needs. So, on two hills, the person in suicidal distress, looking at suicide as a solution to life, because life is miserable at the moment. So they look at conceptualize suicide as the solution, whereas the school counselors or anyone in healthcare will think of that as the problem, right? Like it's a permanent end to problems that may be temporary. So permanent solution. Some people don't like the word solution because we're talking about suicide here. But in the person who is struggling, their mind, it is a solution. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's so easy to get into a power struggle in that situation, trying to drag them from their position to our position, help people see that no, suicide is the problem. That's not the solution. But if we engage in that, we will often be, fighting a battle where, the person sees life as the problem, and we are saying more life, so we are giving them more of the problem, right? And I think that's where helping young people see that whole validation in terms of their interest is to be, escape that entrapment, whatever kind of struggles that they're trapped in at the moment. And at the level of needs, they want to be pain-free. Yes. And the job of the school counselor is to explain those alternatives. What are the other alternatives? And I want to help you be pain-free, right? That's my role. But we have to really understand that narrative of pain that is going through the students' minds in order for them to actually see my role in your life. I'm here to help you either chip away at the pain or raise your tolerance to the pain that is ongoing, because often you can't do much about the source of the pain.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, God.
I do think it's a very powerful message in order to, I know I keep saying it, but to be working closely and in relationship with the client, with the student, to actually, the other things that keep going through my mind is around the empathy and action that you talk about, your thoughts in my head, and your feelings in my heart, and then there's empathy and action. And without this, it can't happen. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. And, it doesn't matter how young the student is, people get pain, people understand pain. So because they've had physical pain, and it's a very automatic desire to want to decrease the pain. There's a very strong life force within all of us that wants to persevere with life and kind of decrease pain. And suicide happens when that pain threshold is exceeded. So that's one of the key things that we harp on about is the narrative of pain. And again, I felt that there were some aha moments about, I can actually talk using some of this narrative, these words, helping them see that, and we do this in that conversation one, which is to convey the key messages. Pain is nature's way of communicating that something that is really important to you is amiss, has imploded. This is really important to you. And I kind of keep telling people, you don't get suicidal about the neighbor's dog, right? Some people might, but hopefully not. You get suicidal about things that deeply, deeply matter to you. These are your closest relationship, your things that bring purpose to your life, like your work, your employment, your family. Those are the things that really do matter to people. And they matter to people in suicidal distress. They matter to you and me, those who aren't feeling that challenged in that way. They're the same things that matter to all of us, and being able to connect at that level.
Absolutely. The shift in that question, what's the matter with you to what matters to you, is incredibly powerful. I think even just, pain is nature's way of communicating that what matters to us is being compromised, or is not, we're missing, we're hurting because of it. We can all have conversations with that, and it opens up different conversations when you're sitting with someone, if you've got that question in your mind.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about it, let's do that. That was, I think, the fourth topic, because we did a risk rethink before that. But let's, because you brought up empathy in action as well, which is one of the key messages in which we cover the values of relational safety in terms of, the courage to be present, just be present. The curiosity, listen with fascination, mind open, mouth shut, listen up, because, and we talk about people, we can listen at 500 words per minute, but people can only speak at 225 words per minute. And what happens in the middle is the solution search. Our mind wanders off searching for solutions to fix it, because we care about the person in front of us. And it's like any other skill. How do you bring your mind back to the story, the narrative of the person? It takes a lot of courage to kind of share their story, and they're sharing that story. Stay in the moment, stay in the room with them. And, the compassion to get up close and personal, but not so close that you get overwhelmed, but close enough to feel that person's darkness, where it comes from. And that's where that equation of empathy in action. If I get your thoughts in my mind, if I get your pain in my heart, then you will get my empathic concern, my genuine desire to help you. That's kind of the fundamental thing in bringing those values of courage, curiosity, compassion, collaboration, and commitment to life. This whole idea of empathy in action, a shift from what's the matter with you to what matters to you. It seems like a small shift, seems like a play on word, but it's actually seismic in the way in which you approach the person. Because if you can work out what matters to them, you will get a whole lot more than just their symptoms or just their diagnosis, the bit around what's the matter with you. Because if you work out what matters to you, the source of the emotional pain, you will automatically get the symptoms, right? You will automatically get what's the matter with them. You will also get the source of hope, because often the source of pain and the source of hope come from the same place, So that's quite a powerful chapter. And I think that's a place where school counselors are actually quite strong. Because when I think about the rating, about empathy and connection, that's where they rated themselves the highest in terms of all the domains on which we got them to do their ratings. They are quite strong, and that came through in the 7 safe steps as well, the way in which they were connecting with empathy. Of course, there is room for improvement in anyone's practice, but I think that's where they were very strong.
I think another powerful part of that, if we've walked alongside and worked with a student in suicidal distress, and we've used that sort of language, and we've got down to what matters to them and connected that with their values and their hope, wow, that's an incredible equipping for the years to come. Yeah. You're not just doing suicide prevention in the moment, you're creating resilience for the future. And I think, and we talk about, I think in the hope framework, we talk about that young man who values independence and wants to buy a house. So we talk about the action that he wants to take is to buy a house, or that's the goal that he wants to achieve. And he's taking a range of different small actions, saving every penny or cent, whichever country you are in. Cancelled his gym membership, cut down on alcohol intake, staying with his parents, not having night out, saving every penny. So investing the money in the stock market, and then the stock market crashes. So he can't achieve his goal. But even in the moment, you can still ask about how do I live the values of independence? How can I still do things? Because if independence is an important value for me, how do we do that? We talked about self-care, and someone in palliative care, if they have 3 months to live, and if they set themselves a goal of good health, they will never be able to get good health. That is an unrealistic goal. But the value of self-care, they can live till the very last breath. I know it's a bit of a morbid example, but you can have cut fresh flowers. You can go for a 10-minute walk. You can just surround yourself with the people you like, right? So that values piece is incredibly powerful in helping people kind of navigate their way through suicidal distress, because values are the qualities we want to bring to our actions, particularly when the going is tough. Yes, and I think it enables people to move away from all or nothing thinking. Right? So, often we might see students, there might be a number of different things that have gone on, but they've failed something, or whatever it is, it's an all or nothing thinking. But when we get down to the values, it might be like we had yesterday, the example of excellence, or to be the best that I can be. Whatever that is, we can build on that. It takes away the power of the disappointment of this one event. Does that make sense? Absolutely, it does make sense, because because that one event can be incredibly powerful in terms of how they are feeling. And if you can help them see that the reason it's causing so much pain is because it is connected to one of their core values, then you can help the student kind of reframe the whole thing. And we had that scenario with Sam, who's a straight A student.
really worried about disappointing her parents. And so excellence is the value that she pursues. So her strength is her weakness. Her strength is her cause of pain at the moment. And being able to help her see that the reason why this is causing you so much pain is because this is really important to you. This matters to you. This is a core value of yours, but this is also your strength. And this diligence for excellence, or this persistence for excellence, is what will get you through this difficult period in your life, is absolute gold dust, helping them make that connection between the source of pain is also your source of hope. You have to hang in there and navigate through that bit. I think we skipped the third topic, which was the risk rethink.
Yes.
In which we did, like there's so much, but what I'm hoping that we will get out of this is that the school counselors would be able to listen to this again, to this podcast, and it would refresh some of the things that they have had, and they can do this on the drive. And that's one of the things I'm hoping. And because learning is a continuous journey, and people forget 70% of the stuff they have heard in 3 days of kind of attending a course. It just dissipates. So I'm just hoping this repetition will kind of help with kind of keeping that alive. So in risk rethink, we talked about Schneidman's cube. So moving from a categorical approach, what you said, the high, medium, low, to this continuum. And I love the simplicity, the elegant simplicity of Schneidman's cube in terms of the 3 axes that it has got: psychological pain, overwhelming life stress, and we have got agitation or perturbation. And right at one end of the cube is 0, 0, 0, and at the diametrically opposite end is 5, 5, 5. And that 5, 5, 5 is essentially the very definition of clear and imminent risk. The other reason why I really like Schneidman's cube is because it is very empowering for everyone. Because you use the phrase all or none. Like, it doesn't need to be suicidal or not suicidal, but just shifting someone from a 555 to a 554 or a 545 or a 55, which combination I missed, 545 or 455, right? So just giving someone breathing space, like 2 extra weeks to get an assignment in, right? That might just shift them from that immense, intense, overwhelming life stressor that they have got. They still have to do the assignment, but that extra 2 weeks has shifted them from a 555 to a 554 on that overwhelming life stress axis. Hasn't taken their suicidality away, but you have just shifted clear and imminent risk. And it's incredibly empowering for counselors and teachers to think, actually, I can do something to help this.
100%. Makes it very tangible.
Yeah.
And takes, I think, the weight that you feel around the fear and anxiety of how do I keep this child safe, or the student safe. Actually, there are small things that we can do that just move them away from the 555.
Yeah.
And I can see this being used as a tool with the student, to
because often the solution lies inside the students as well.
Yeah.
Just asking them, hey, I'm very worried about you. I feel this is where you are. How can we move this one step? Okay, is there anything that we can do? We won't be able to resolve everything. Is there one thing that I can do which will take away this overwhelming life stress? Or is there one thing that I can do which kind of just chips away at the pain, the psychological pain that you have got, or the source of that intense anxiety? And in Sam's case, it was the anxiety of those images coming out, right? That was one of the things. And just knowing that actually the principal knows about it and is supportive. And yes, you did something really stupid by doing that, but we have heard the story and we are here to support you through this difficult patch in your life. Just knowing that might shift someone from that 555 to a 554, right? So it's just one little bit of disclosure. You have brought it out into the open. So the sister Scarlett was studying mathematics in Oxford, and just being able to share that with Scarlett might just take that weight off her shoulders just that little bit. So you think that, you haven't done anything by supporting that disclosure. You've just moved someone from clear and imminent risk one step away from that. And that's the power of those conversations, shifting someone on that continuum of risk. Mm-hmm. And then we build into that whole idea of thinking about risk in 3 different ways. So not high, medium, low. So we talked about longitudinal risk, in which how a person's risk ebbs and flows over time. How does it compare to their worst point, their best point? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? So it's their longitudinal risk over time. Then we talked about unaddressed risk, because people often talk about risk without safety planning, because you can't talk about risk without safety planning, right? Once you have done the safety plan, you then know what is the unaddressed risk that is left in that situation. And we talk about that safe kind of paradigm in there: scenario planning, access to means, family, friends, follow-up, and an emergency plan. How good that is, what is the level of commitment, and then you know what is the unaddressed risk. And then we get people to think about cross-sectional risk. So in the here and now, how does this person's risk compare to those who may be in inpatient care, those who may be in secondary care supported by child and youth services or child and adolescent mental health services? How does the risk compare to those who are just being looked after by a GP or a clinical psychologist? So where is their risk at this point in time? And when you combine longitudinal risk with unaddressed risk and cross-sectional risk, you then begin to define, okay, is the risk clear and imminent? And we have a big focus in Protect about clear and imminent risk. You can't do anything about something that's going to happen 6 months down the line or a year down the line. But you can do something about the here and now just by that one step, move someone from that axis.
Mm-hmm. And I think that those 3 tiers, they're not tiers, 3 strands, provide such a rich and deep understanding of where the student is at. And I think that's the real value and a shift in my thinking. I think about the longitudinal and the unaddressed risk, bringing it all together. Yeah,
because in a way, the first 2 strands are almost about conversations with the student and the student's family, right? You can almost have that conversation with the student. Okay, where is your risk? Okay, you've been having those thoughts. Are they getting more intense? Are they getting more frequent? Is there more duration? Are they less controllable or more controllable? Are they more concrete? Are they more specific? So that's a conversation with the student. Could be a conversation with the parents as well. What have you all noticed? Is he happier? Is he participating in more activities? Is he locking himself up in his room, the isolation? So from that, you can do that longitudinal bit in terms of where is the risk tracking.
Yes.
The unaddressed risk, of course, we've talked about endlessly. Safety planning, if it's not collaborative, it's a waste of time. You're just doing that for yourself. If it's so, safety planning is absolutely with the person and their natural circle of support. The cross-sectional risk conversation, I feel, is a conversation that a school counselor can have with a fellow colleague, with a teacher, with a principal, just thinking through, sharing, these are my findings about longitudinal risk. These are my findings about the unaddressed risk. What do you think where we are with, my feeling is they are here, they might need secondary care at the moment. They need to be in the public service, or they need a psychiatrist, they need a clinical psychologist. So that is a great way to think it through with another colleague. I was going to say,
what a fantastic opportunity we've got here now with all of us training together to start to build that network. And that is
with the same language.
The same language, the same frameworks. I think we've got a huge opportunity to do that.
And when we get into these reflective practice groups, I think you will find that you are able to do a lot of these things. Tracey, I'm just aware of time. I have got all the time in the world, but I don't know, because you've got children as well to get to. So mine are teenagers. How are we doing for time? So,
what is it? I catch a ferry. If I can be on the 5:40 ferry, which means I've got about another 20 minutes. I probably need to catch the bus.
Okay, 20 minutes. We'll do 20 minutes. Okay, so. Right. So that's the core module. So we looked at risk versus recovery in the first one. We looked at life versus death, which was the Optimise Pain Relief. We did the risk rethink, which is the category versus continuum. And the fourth one was function versus form, because you could end up empathy in action. You could end up filling up endless forms. But actually, if you're not carrying out the function, which is to create relational safety and create empathy in action, then actually that form filling is a waste of time. Don't bother. So that's the core module, and we repeatedly say, and I'll say this to the school counselors: protect the core, progress all else. These fundamental principles, these dilemmas that we're trying to navigate, risk versus recovery, this life versus death thing, because inside the mind of that young person, there is this struggle that is going on between reasons for living and reasons for dying. And what we want to do is we want to increase the reasons for living while bringing down the reasons for dying. That's what we're doing. That's where the Schneidman's cube comes in. How can we move them one step? And how do we do it? We do it through empathy in action, by showing this young person what matters to you matters to me too. What matters to us. And you're creating that whole narrative of, I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to go through this with you. And yes, you might need to get more help and support as we go on the journey, but I'm here for you as we are walking together. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So that's the core module. And then sort of we got into the aware module, and things begin to get very interesting here, because it's starting to get into the meat of the practice that people do. Do you recollect anything from this particular chapter, the aware module, the rational versus rationalizing?
Yes, I found this. I was going to say confronting. It certainly made me reflect on my practice a whole lot around the rationalizing, how I have formed decisions before around where a student is at. I think it takes all those other things we've been talking about, that understanding of suicide, coming down to values, all those sorts of things, and the role that anxiety plays to be able to hold the rational path.
Yeah, stay in that rational space, follow the facts.
To follow the facts. And I think there's a tension between following the facts and then the anxiety. For me, I'm rubbing my stomach as I say this, it would sit in my stomach.
Yeah. I would do actually say, listen to your gut as well. If your gut's telling you something's not right, that's quite a sensitive thing as well. But at the same time, the problem that we feel is that there are so many competing pressures on a healthcare professional, right? And there is this strong urge to get rid of anxiety, because anxiety as an emotion is not a nice emotion to carry. And that's why we seek out those safety reassurances. Can you keep yourself safe? It's a pointless question. I can keep myself safe now in front of you, but when I go home and I'm all by myself and those thoughts are crowding into my head, I don't know then. So that safety reassurance makes me feel good. It doesn't do anything for that young person. So we actually kind of advocate, don't ask questions that are pointless, because risk is dynamic, risk is changing all the time. You might ask a question around, when the going gets bad, how are you going to maintain your safety? Because trust me, if someone's having suicidal distress, the going will fluctuate. Yeah.
I think that's a really key message. I know you just said that very quickly just then, but sharing with the student, sharing around this does fluctuate. Suicide ideation comes in waves. Working around that, it's normalizing that actual experience, that it does come in waves. A little bit like, we talk about our feelings, our emotions, like internal weather inside, doing these things are so powerful. Coming back to this chapter around that being in the rational space and anxiety, I think it's also about working out what the anxiety is about, what's driving that.
Yeah.
And trying to understand that, to be able to weigh up how much more do I need to listen to this, and what's it trying to tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. We will stop here for today, but the conversation with Tracey continues next Friday. In today's episode, you heard about the key messages from the core module, those that relate to risk versus recovery, and how the Care Compass can be used to have a collaborative conversation with a student and their family. You heard about Optimise Pain Relief and how we need to dig deep, understand really what lies beneath the position, the interests, and the needs of the person who is in suicidal distress. You gained a new understanding of how to conceptualize risk. In particular, we talked a fair bit about Schneidman's cube and the definition of clear and imminent risk. You learned that risk is a continuum, and risk is dynamic, and risk fluctuates with what is going on in the person's life. And finally, you learned about empathy in action, the 4th chapter in the core module. We talked about empathy in action, and you learned about the equation. Empathy in action is equal to cognitive empathy, your thoughts in my mind, emotional empathy, your pain in my heart. And if you can gain both of those two things, the person you are supporting will get your empathic concern, your genuine desire to help. That is the core module. We will pick up the discussion about rational versus rationalizing and the assess module in the next edition of the podcast, which you will get to hear next Friday. Stay tuned in, and remember, whichever organization you're working in, please continue to make preparations for World Suicide Prevention Day on the 10th of September. That's a great opportunity to get the word out about suicide, fight stigma, and normalize the entire narrative about suicide and bring to the forefront suicide prevention. Keep smiling. See you next Friday.